We continue with Seder Kriyat Torah, the Shabbat, our Torah service found on page 362. If you're able, please rise. According to our tradition, Moses received this Torah on Mount Sinai and passed it on to Joshua. Joshua passed it on to the elders pass it on to the prophets, and the prophets pass it on to the members of the great assembly. And so throughout our generations as a people, this Torah, most precious and holy gift, has been passed down from generation to generation. In a moment, Kayleigh will receive this Torah from her grandparents' and parents' hands, at that moment indicating her willingness to accept the essence of what it means to be a Jew, and that's to be a mensch, a good and decent person. And all of us in this room know that Ms. Kayleigh is a professor of menschlichkeit. She has been practicing this for well over 13 years, in my opinion. I think she's been practicing for a lifetime. She's an amazingly loving person. And in a moment, she'll receive this Torah from her parents' hand, becoming part of one of the most important mitzvot we have, the Dor Vador, passing our tradition down from one generation to the next. As we now have the opportunity to pass this Torah through generations of Kayleigh's family represented here in the Bima, where we begin with her great uncle, off the Bima.
Like so many generations of Jewish parents before us, we stand ready to pass on to you, Kayleigh, this Torah, symbol of our tradition. May you be worthy of this priceless inheritance. May you live by its precepts and take its teachings into your heart. May you be a faithful Jew, teaching for wisdom and truth, working for justice and peace. Amen.
We pray that someday you will experience the joy and pride of passing on the Torah to your children. May the God of your people, the God of the universe, bless you. May the one who has always been our guide inspire you to continue bringing honor to our family and to the people of Israel. Amen. Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, shehecheyanu, v'kiyamanu, v'higyanu, l'zman hazeh. We praise you, Eternal One, Sovereign God of the universe, for giving us life, for sustaining us, and for enabling us to reach this season. Amen.
We join together.
Shehecheyanu
And basically, the most famous section of this part of the Parsha, which talks about the laws and blessings and curses, in fact, the laws of kashrut, that is, the laws of keeping kosher. And it's interesting because a lot of people have a lot of misconceptions about keeping kosher. First of all, we're part of a movement, reform movement, that does not believe one has to keep kosher, not to offend anyone, does not have to keep kosher to be a good Jew, right, Kayleigh?
Right.
So, if you wanted to BLT, you could do motzi, a prayer before and eat it, and from a Reformed Jewish perspective, you're not breaking a law. But the issue, though, is why is it here in the first place? What's the point of it? Well, I think there's a lot of points to it, which I won't go over all of them with you today. But just to share a couple thoughts about this. It's actually very interesting because it's really not about, if you will, the animal or about what we eat. It's really about creating a sense of holiness. In fact, the laws of kashrut, which really initially come out of Leviticus, that are just referred to here again as part of Moses' summary to the Israelites, actually come out of the Holiness Code. And that is a section of our Torah that really talks about ways that we're holy. So for some people, when they go through the laws of keeping kosher, separating the dairy from the meat, or not eating what we call treif, which would be pork or shellfish, for them that creates a sense of holiness for them. But for all of us, what creates a sense of holiness for us? Is it what you eat? If it is, then I would think that. If it's how we behave, which I hope we all would agree, that holiness is really through behavior as well, then we would want to focus on our behavior. But either way, the idea of holiness is vital for all of us. In kashrut, the idea of being fit is actually a very interesting concept, because a lot of us would contend that it's not about this, the actual laws, but maybe when you start thinking about it more globally, like, who's the person that literally grows our food? Are they treated appropriately? What about the person that takes that food, harvests it? Is that person treated appropriately? So there are many in Judaism today that are saying, well, we have to rethink how we look at kashrut, keeping kosher. Maybe we need to start looking at how the animal's treated before it is slaughtered, or how we treat the individuals that prepare the food for us. So kashrut now has really been expanded because holiness really is how we treat each other. Even if we're going to eat an animal, it still has to be treated appropriately. And we need to almost be thankful for the fact that we're going to eat meat. The other comment that I would add is we overeat meat in this society. And it used to be that when you eat meat, it would be very special occasions. I personally am an advocate of eating meat on special occasions only because I think we overeat it and it has terrible health ramifications for all of us. But more importantly, look what it's doing to our planet. Look what it's doing to the United States alone. And so it's something we need to think about when we look at the laws of keeping kosher is really, from a larger perspective, not just these laws, but more importantly, a global perspective. There was a time we didn't eat meat every day. Why are we eating it sometimes 3 times a day? Something we need to think about. So with all